Customer service, done right, can be your company's single biggest competitive advantage. Welcome to the Customer Service Revolution. Join customer service authority and best-selling author John DeJulius as he interviews leaders who are revolutionizing their industries. This is more than a podcast, though. It's a movement. The Customer Service Revolution is a radical overthrow of conventional business mentality designed to transform what customers and employees experience. If you're a revolutionary customer service leader who's ready to stop competing on price and obsessed with building a brand that people cannot live without, this podcast is for you.
Welcome, revolutionaries, to episode 138 of the Customer Service Revolution podcast. I am John DeJulius, Chief Revolution Officer of the DeJulius Group. The DeJulius Group is changing the world by creating a customer service revolution. Today's episode is brought to you by the Customer Experience Executive Academy, known as CXEA. CXEA is like the Harvard of customer experience. It's like getting a master's degree in customer experience. It's a 12-month program, part-time, where students come on site every quarter for 3 days in beautiful Cleveland, Ohio, and then they meet virtually in between. The next class starts January 2024. If you want to make the experience your brand delivers your single biggest competitive advantage and make price irrelevant, then register today for the CXEA class of 2024. Visit cxea.org today. On today's episode, we will be interviewing Michael Caito, a serial entrepreneur, right, who started back in the 1990s at a very young age, fresh, I think he was still in college, and he launched Restaurants on the Run, which was eventually bought by Grubhub. And Michael grew it with his obsession of customer and employee focus and scaled it to 10 different markets, cities, 600 employees, and $40 million in revenue. So before we get to the interview, let's talk about some great best practices you should consider doing. Benson Kearley IFG is a financial company out of Ontario, Canada, who I've been working with for probably over 12 to 15 years. And they just do an amazing job. Stephen Kearley, President, CEO of Benson Kearley IFG, is I've written about him in books. He's been on a podcast, on the Customer Service Revolution podcast. One of the coolest things that they do is what they refer to as the Ford monthly allowance. Ford as in family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. Benson Kearley is not your typical insurance agency because Stephen Kearley is not your typical company president. Benson Kearley is obsessed with providing a world-class client experience, both to their customers and employees, and it's paying off huge dividends with exponential growth. So Benson Kearley created an amazing incentive to help its team focus on collecting for, again, family, occupation, recreation, and dream. This program provides every account executive a $25 monthly allowance that they must spend every month on their customers, creating greater customer engagement, all right, via more engaged employees. So if you're looking for a great way to get your employees to connect, not transaction, just transact with your customers, listen up. Every employee struggles. Every company struggles with trying to get their employees not to be transactionally focused, just answering the customer's question and moving on to the next call or meeting. While making money for the company is part of most jobs description, this reminds employees to be present, to stay in the moment by listening and recognizing their clients forward, and then following up with a delightful surprise. For example, an existing customer might call to ask a question about policy, and in the process mention that's their wedding anniversary this weekend. That comment will likely trigger the Benson Kearley employee to send flowers or a gift card, utilizing their $25 monthly Ford allowance. Remembering personal details about customers and helping celebrate them is a surefire strategy for strong customer retention. Not only does it create a sense of connection, but it also helps draw in potential customers as current customers tell family, friends, and colleagues and the world at large on social media platforms about their personalized, positive experience with Benson and Kearley. To maintain a sense of ownership, Benson and Kearley account executives have to report on how they used their Ford monthly allowance. The third Monday of each month, during their huddle, the account executives get up and take turns sharing how each of them spent their money this month. According to Courtney Kearley, who works at Benson and Kearley, she says this helps give the team who may have not used their monthly allowance some ideas on how they can spend their money in the future. It can also switch the conversation from a negative client experience to a positive one with good clients. Courtney Kearley goes on and explains it is easy to hang up the phone after a call with a rude customer and complain, but we don't often do that after a good experience with a client. So, meaning we don't share the good experiences. So we like to ask our team in the meetings if they had a good client experience they'd like and wanted to share. I referred to this a couple episodes ago as having client appreciation meetings with your team. No clients there, but just talk about your favorite clients. So as Courtney Kearley shares, we like to give a client shout out. Courtney is the marketing director of Benson and Kearley. It's a feel-good strategy that can't help but result in happy employees and improved company culture. Benson Kearley has a catalog with a wide range of products from which their employees can pick out gifts to send to their clients for various occasions, right? Like wedding, congratulations, sympathy, first car, new car. They just help make it so easy. Benson and Kearley also came up with a campaign targeted increasing the amount of Ford they collect on their clients. Back when one of the new Star Wars movies was being launched, their slogan was, "May the Fords be with you." Get it? They even created a Star Wars advent calendar for each office location. Every day, they drew names of account executives to open the doors on the calendar. They also had an R2D2 trophy that was awarded to the top Ford producer. All of this added excitement, motivation, and fun to the collective employee experience while helping to create a best-in-class client experience. Just to tie this in, author Daniel Pink, one of my favorite authors, wrote a blog about the power of making things personal. And Pink cites a study of radiologists whose job was to read scans on computers. The radiologist was divided into two groups. The first group read the scans and came back with a report. The second group read the same scans, but they were giving some forward information about the patient's photo, right? Information that they've been married for 50 years or just lost their wife or expecting their first child in a few months. And that second group of radiologists came back with more meticulous reports, okay? But up to now, all that shows me is group 2 was just better radiologists than group B until you hear the rest of the story. After a period of time, the researchers went back to the group 2 who had been given the pictures of patients and without them being aware, had them read the same scans. It's like a year later, but without any information, without pictures, without forward of the patients that the scans they were reporting on. And the stunning finding was that about 80% of the previous findings were not reported. Think about that. most people believe that customer is the one who benefits when the employee makes a personal connections. But this example clearly shows that when your employees, when we make a connection, as in the case of the radiologist, when we have a personal relationship with the customer, emotional commitment, that we do a more thorough and better job. Okay, so how can you incorporate the Ford allowance into your company? We'll be right back with our interview with Michael Caito after this. Everyone agrees if you can't grow your people, you can't grow your business. I believe one of the best ways in growing your people is through reading. No program on the planet promotes, recognizes, and rewards reading like the Better Book Club. Not at all a traditional book club. Better Book Club is a radical, better way to build the habit of reading in your team members. And once you build the habit of reading, anything is possible. Learn more at betterbookclub.com. That is betterbookclub.com. Welcome back, revolutionaries, for our interview with Michael Caito, a serial entrepreneur. Michael's entrepreneurial roots date back to the early 1990s when he was like 5 or 6.
That's right.
When he and his two partners launched Restaurants on the Run. What is Restaurants on the Run? Well, I'm going to call it DoorDash before DoorDash. And Michael opened that with mere $6,000 and spent the next 20 years building that business. And when the company sold in 2015, it was valued at 12 times EBITDA. That's crazy. I mean, that's it. And scaled 10 markets, 600 team members, and 40 million in revenue. Today, Michael is the owner of the MAP management systems, which we'll talk about. And his most notorious, what he's most famous for.
Here we go.
We had Mike. Do I have to call you Michael? What we get all fit. Where'd Michael come from?
You call me Mike. Most people call me Caito, but like Mike is fine.
In your bio, it's Michael, and don't say anything else or he gets really upset. I'm like, all right, whatever your handlers say. All right, so Michael Caito, I've been, wow. Well, I'll ask you, this will be a trivia question, where we met, see if you know. But been working with Michael on and off for the past, 15, 20 years. And because of his incredible business and the way he treated his customers, employees, I asked him to speak at one of our, today it's called Customer Service Revolution, but back then it was Secret Service. I think it was about 2010. And Michael was the lowest rated speaker we've ever had. But I'm having you back, Mike. I'm having you back. But I say this, Mike, you're an awesome speaker. Listen, you were up against huge. I remember that year we had a great lineup like we always do. But one of them was Dick Hoyt, who just recently passed away. But Dick's story was he did Ironmans with his son. His son who couldn't walk or anything, he pushed him in literally did 26 miles in pushing him in a wheelchair, swam with him with a buoy behind him, rode bike with him, so how are you going to, rank with that story, Mike? Welcome, Mike. Wow. How are you?
Yeah, that's good. That's great. It's nice. Great to be here. Well, listen, are we done yet? Because I'm just going to take off.
Yeah.
Okay. So for the audience, here's the lesson. If you speak in public a lot. So, that was 2010. And, I was excited because I love to talk. I love telling the story and talking about building a business, accountability. And I integrated stories around strategy, around people, around execution. Here's the challenge. I've only spoke to entrepreneurs and CEOs. And so I come into that room and give that speech, which I worked hard to build and got all kinds of creative analogies because I just got back from Africa. And, I misread the audience. Okay. You had 400 or 500 people there, a piece of them, maybe 10% or so, 20%, whatever, were CEOs, entrepreneurs.
Right.
And the rest were staff. So I told stories that were meant for CEOs.
Mike, your presentation was great. I mean, our lowest rated, and this, would be the highest rated any other event. You crushed it. I just liked it.
That was great. We appreciate that, John. So you said, trivia question, where we met. So we met, I believe, at a GLC in Chicago.
Yes.
And,
2004, 2005.
And you were at the front standing on a chair, ranting and raving.
Because no one could see me.
And I, and I was like, okay, this guy's different. And in a second, I'll tell you why it resonated so much with us. But I just said, I was that guy. I just came right up to you afterwards. I'm like, bro, great stuff. Introduced myself. And then we went from there and we became friends, but you came out and worked with our company. And then I came back and did the thing. And then we met periodically throughout that and had dinner at your house. So yeah, that's how it all began.
Yeah. So the funny story is, for those who don't know, EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, YPO, it was one of their events.
Yep.
And it was probably too early for me. So that was a regional, I think it was called, right? Like that in Chicago.
I think it might have been. Did I give a keynote
or university?
I think it was at GLC, and I may have spoke there at that GLC to the audience, or the year after that. I don't remember.
So where I'm going with it is I had only done up to that time a few chapters. Chapters, for those of you who don't know, every city, Cleveland, Chicago, Perth, every city has a chapter. And those are great. I did a few, so I don't know how I got hit to this university, which is a bigger. I was really nervous.
It was a big audience. They even had the booths back in the back with translators.
Yeah, exactly. So it was probably my biggest event professionally speaking. And I was really nervous because I know how critical entrepreneurs are. And so I remember, I halfway through the breakout, the presentation you were at, there was something wrong with my audio. I was playing a video. So I remember when the next video played, I did a beeline to the back of the room to tell the guy to turn it down, turn it up. I can't remember. And I remember walking down the aisle, and some guy, as I pass him, gets up and follows me, which I didn't think nothing of. I thought he was either bored or he was going to the bathroom, whatever. So I go behind the AV stand and the guy follows me. I'm like, this is really weird. Like, why is this guy following me? And it was Matthew Stewart, who I've had on the podcast.
Yeah.
And he says, hey, can I give you a little midway halftime advice or feedback? Right?
Such an ass.
I'm crapping my pants, Mike, because it's a big venue, big audience for me. Not sure I really, deserve to be there. Don't know how I got there. And then this guy says, hey, can I give you some feedback? And I'm like, sure. What do you say? Right. I'm like, sure. Yeah. But in my head, I'm like, no. Listen, the only reason why you get up mid-speech to give a speaker feedback is he's pissing you off. Right. Yeah. I mean, why else? And so I'm like, oh, God, like this is going to ruin it for me. I said, yeah, sure. And, wishing this guy would just drop dead right there. And he says, this is the best I've ever heard. And totally not expecting that. Yeah. And then, he goes back and I'm like, I still didn't recover because I thought he was going to say, you know what, all you're doing is talking about hair salon bullshit. And this doesn't apply to, my type of business or B2B or man, I got that a lot in the beginning and they were right. So I thought he was just totally going to level me. And then you two both came up and booked me. But so Matt Stewart, that's a funny Matt Stewart. And if you know Matt Stewart, that wouldn't surprise anyone.
No, not at all. He's extremely gracious. And he's all about giving, and and sometimes he just gives at the wrong time, but it worked out. Yeah. Well, you never know. You might just walk in my house.
Let's get a little bit off me. I mean, I do the podcast because I want to talk about myself, but
we like that.
Right. Let's talk about Caito. Before you opened restaurants on the run, what was your background?
So in high school, I started working at restaurants. Well, first thing I did was, I was dishwashing. Then I was a busboy. Then I was a dishwasher. Then I ended up being a waiter at like 16. So at 16, I was living at the time in Milwaukee.
So hospitality was in your blood?
Hospitality was in my blood and I loved it.
So you went from Buffalo to Milwaukee?
My mother was living in Milwaukee. So for 2 years, I lived in high school. I moved into Milwaukee, lived in Milwaukee,
grew up in Buffalo,
worked in restaurants, but grew up in Buffalo. And
dude, you like
went back to Buffalo.
You like the cold.
Yeah. No, I don't. You'll see why. So when I was 18, when I was 17, I got a taste of California. And, to me, California Los Angeles was, you only see it on TV, Hollywood, so on and so forth, 18 years old, 1985. So the following year in 86, I was dating a girl who had moved to California and she calls me up and she's like, hey, I'm moving back home. I'm going to move back to live with my dad in Buffalo. I'm like, no, you're not. I'm coming out there. And so I convinced my father, packed all my stuff in garbage bags, put them in my 1979 Camaro Berlinetta, my red Camaro Berlinetta, and drove cross country.
That's
and
a
landed
nice
in Orange,
car.
in
Listen,
Orange
it's
County.
only 5 years old, right? 6 years old. That's not bad.
Yeah.
At
It
the
wasn't
time,
bad
right?
at that time. At the time, right.
I'm impressed.
I buy older cars now. So so I did that. We just got on the, and you know, the funny thing is I went right to the restaurant, Baker Square. There was a Baker Square here that I had no idea. And I went straight into them and I said, listen,
Is that
I used
where
to
you
work
were working?
For you.
Were you working for a Baker Square?
In Milwaukee. I walked
Milwaukee?
right in. They hired me on the spot, you know, and started
So
waiting tables. And the
hospitality,
rest was
restaurants
history.
is the only thing you know at this time.
I only knew hospitality.
It's a good industry to know. Now, did this work out with this girlfriend?
No. That was that didn't. We were together 5 years. She got me out to California, which was great. And you know, then of course, eventually, I met my beautiful wife Carol.
Yeah.
And had 3 boys that terrorized us on a daily basis.
Yeah.
One will more than like
everyone.
one.
You brought me to your house after a speech in L.A. where you live now, or Orange County or whatever.
Orange County, yeah.
And you called it the mafia,
preschool mafia.
Yeah, and they were crazy. I have crazy boys, but I was like, wow,
your boys are nice. They're well behaved.
All right, so how does it convert here from going from working in the restaurant industry to seeing an opportunity for restaurants on the run? Because listen, it's so easy to look at today and say, duh, no brainer. But you were a pioneer. I mean, was there anyone that was doing anything like DoorDash in the 90s?
Well, you got to remember in the 90s when we started in 93, there was no internet.
Right.
And there was no mobile phones, no mobile technology. So, my partner, Matt, had seen it being done in San Francisco. So I had 2 partners, my brother, Anthony, and his best friend, Matt. And we were all in college. They're 3 years younger than me. So I was 24 years old. I was in year 7 of my 4-year degree. Let that settle in.
Yeah.
I did this thing that, you always hear people say to do, but I'd never really done it. I wrote down on a little Post-it note my goals for the next year, which were, 19. It was at the end of 92. And I said, find an idea for a business. Stuck it on the wall. I had some other goals.
How old were you?
I was 24.
Okay. Still
in college.
A couple years left in college. Yeah.
So I wrote it down, and a couple months later, these 2 nitwits, my brother and his best friend, who were 20 and 21, come to me, and Matt's the guy that had the idea. He's always been a great idea guy. Which you met Matt and Anthony.
Yeah. I think I'm taller than Anthony. That's why he's one of my favorite people.
Exactly.
I haven't met too many people that.
Well, listen, I'm not much taller than you. So we, in fact, I'm the shortest in my house. But they came in with the idea, and it was like, let's do this food delivery thing. And I was like, it's just crazy enough to not work, but let's give it a shot. And we started, writing what we would call a very loose business plan. We actually bought some kit from Entrepreneur magazine. Some restaurant delivery startup, believe it or not, they had it. We looked at it, we used part of it, but we played around planning for it, for 3-4 months, and we opened up in July of 1993.
And how'd you get word out? I mean, it's so funny, like pre-internet, like how anyone, business other than drive-by traffic, but you weren't a brick and mortar, right? So tell our audience the concept, and then how you got it to 40 million in 15 years or whatever it was.
Yeah, it was the multi-restaurant food delivery is what it's called back then. So DoorDash, Grubhub, Uber Eats, the same thing. And so we when we were opening, we had to sell restaurants not only on the concept because they'd never heard of it, but we also had to sell them on doing business with us. 3 college kids, that were trying to run a business. And we signed up like 6 restaurants on our first run through. One of them was like a pretty well-known restaurateur, so he gave us a shot with for catering, a catering menu.
And I'm sorry, back then, I don't know if it's different today. Who's absorbing the fees for you to deliver their food?
It was the
customer
same model,
or the restaurant.
So it was the same model. We would buy the food at like a 25 to 30% discount.
Okay, and
then charge regular prices, and then have a delivery fee. That was it. Now things have gotten out of control with all these different fees, and now you're the restaurant's paying for it, but then the prices are getting marked up.
Right.
The industry's ripe for
disruption. Was there any players in the space at the time that you knew
Not
of?
Around us. There might have been like a little baby one somewhere, but it was just us. So we got to get to go. We started with 6 restaurants. And the way we got the word out, we printed a little magazine, which was way too expensive. And we did a couple of things that you would think obvious. Obvious ones, we mailed it. Okay. We started working with businesses to start. That was our first business to business during the day because we had to work in restaurants at nighttime to support ourselves because we had only $6,000 to start this business. So we would go business to business. We would mail them. We would flyer them. We would on cars. We drop off magazines. But the most important decision we made, we were lucky. I don't know how we figured it out, but we started putting racks in the restaurants with our magazines in it. So we had to convince restaurants to put a magazine for food delivery in their restaurant, even though there were other restaurants in there. And we told them, like, listen, you're going to put this in your restaurant, but there's going to be a bunch of other restaurants that have the same thing. So the first massive lesson we learned about business, after we started was the concept of partnering and building your brand on the credibility of another brand. And that really helped us to kind of get to it.
Yeah,
and eventually
it's like, I compare it to a comedian. Like, you want to go see this, Joe Blow, and you're like, hey, he's been on, Jimmy Kimmel 3 times. Oh, right. And then, instant credibility. Instant credibility.
And that's what it was for us. But when we started the business, it started slow, but we didn't know really much about business. If we had more time and I walk you through the bigger story, you'll be able to see the trade-offs we make around strategy that actually luckily turned out to be right.
Depending on how well this one goes.
Yeah. That's a strategy discussion. But in the beginning, like I said, we didn't know anything. We knew 2 things. We only knew 2 things. Number 1, you got to take care of your people.
How did you know that? Obviously everyone says that, but most people don't, right? So at 24, 25, right? Yeah. And you're the elder statesman of your leadership team. How'd you know that was a rare thing?
I think some of it is almost a little cultural. Like, we grew up in New York, all 3 of us. We're all Italian. Grandma's on Sunday. We just grew up in this like family mentality where you're always, helping each other and taking care of each other. And so,
was some of it, Mike, was some of it from working in the industry and realizing that, not everyone did, and you wanted to, provide something different?
I'm sure there was part of that, but the second thing that we knew, like I said, we only knew 2 things: take care of your people. The second was take care of our customers. Like, no matter what, it was like everything revolved around those 2 things. In fact, taking care of the employees was easy. We were just nice guys, and we wanted to see people win. The customer thing, would get more and more difficult as we started to scale, because now you needed to have systems in place.
Well, also, Mike, I'm sorry. Let me clarify something and correct me if I got it wrong here. But you have multiple customers in this business model, right? You got Mr. and Mrs. Smith who are waiting for their food to be delivered by your company. But, you tell me, just as equal, if not more, your customer is the restaurant. Because if you don't have the restaurant, you got nothing to deliver and no one's calling you.
Also, there's 3 constituents. You might call, we'll say, the employees and the drivers, both of them. Okay. Then you had the end user, and then you had the restaurant. So we had to make sure. But like in the beginning, like I said, we're small enough, and Anthony and I and Matt were involved in everything. So we're talking to customers, we're delivering food, we're meeting with the restaurants. So we were able to deliver the kind of service that we wanted to deliver, to all 3 constituents. But as I was saying, as things got as we started to grow a little bit, now we had to make sure that the people we employed had the same kind of concept around service to each other and service to the end user. So we're looking for those kind of people. But it got a little viral in a way, because as we're bringing in people, everybody knew what our philosophy was on how we handled.
Oh, that's great. Clients. So your reputation was deterring wrong fit people from the beginning, right? So it's like
100%.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Some people would say, I don't want to work there. They're like nuts. They do all the stuff for their customer. That weeds it out for you versus, I've experienced them. My buddy works there. I want to be a part of it, which, that's great. And listen, every time I've ever worked with your team, be it leadership or, you have me speak to the entire staff, there was an energy, a palpability that you could feel in that room. And you just attracted that, which was so cool.
Yeah. But it's just, like I said, like when I train entrepreneurs, I say to them, I go, listen, we as entrepreneurs can put our company on our back for a while. Okay. Our energy, our charisma, our passion, and people are attracted to that. People want to be around winners. They want to win themselves. They want to be a part of something growing, but eventually, whether it's service, accountability, sales, marketing, whatever systems you have to have in your business, eventually the business, as you grow, will outgrow the capabilities of the charisma and passion of an entrepreneur. And that's where you say, okay, now we've got to have the right systems in place to help scale what we need to do. And most people miss. It's funny. You and I are both in businesses right now, which we'll get to later about what I do now. But people understand, I got to have a sales system. I got to have a marketing system. I've got to have an HR system. What they miss is a customer service system and a management system. I mean, when I say management system, I mean a system of accountability, how you run the whole organization, the umbrella system. They miss that. And that's why it's unique that you and I are in those two spaces.
Yeah. And you're so right. One of the biggest complaints I've heard from everyone, and it's resonated with me, and you kind of brought it up, is, this isn't like it used to be, right? When we worked with Mike and Anthony and Matt back in the day, and we were just trying to keep the doors open, there was something galvanizing about that. But now there's a new generation or several generations that don't even, and this is before you sold it, right? But, same thing in my world, that don't even know Mike that well, maybe have seen him at some company events, but they're not sitting on the floor at midnight eating pizza, trying to figure out how we're going to, make it to another month, payroll, rent. And, there's a great article in Harvard Business Review called, The Soul of a Startup. It just talks about that and how, inevitably how to try to keep it, but it all comes from our next generation of leaders who have to replace us, who have to light the fire, and to your thing, have accountability. Passion without accountability is nothing. I mean, it's just flavor of the week, flavor of the month. So where was your influx of the tipping point where you knew you were onto something before the competition got crazy in your space?
Yeah, I would say it took probably about a year, 6 months before we were like, okay, we got something here. And then at about a year, we were getting busy enough where we could quit our night jobs at restaurants. And so we'd quit the job at night, and then we worked full time. When I say full time, we were open 7 days a week. So we would work. Well, eventually, in the beginning, we worked every day, but then eventually we were able to rotate 2 days off every 3 weeks. So, but we were open day and night, and, daytime was business to business. Nighttime was, some business to business, but a lot of, home business, delivery to homes for, a lot of pizza and stuff like that before Chinese. And so, I mean, we knew probably within right around year one that we were onto something, but we didn't really fully know until probably year 6 or 7 when we had bought our first company in San Diego. Remember, for their listeners, we were in Orange County, which is situated between Los Angeles and San Diego. And we had bought a company in San Diego, and our concept was, if we can buy a company that is... You bought
not a competitor because they're a different market, but someone doing what you were doing in a different city, San Diego, right?
Yes.
Okay.
We weren't smart enough or sophisticated enough to buy something different than what we did and try to create a new capability in our business. So we bought a competitor a friendly, someone in a different market that was doing exactly what we did, integrated them. And then our philosophy is if we can run that market just like we run this market, but from a distance, and the distance is only a 45-minute drive, we can be back and forth every day. But if we can perfect that, then we will be able to move this thing into other markets. And that was...
So San Diego was your second market?
Yeah.
And did you change the name, or did you keep it what it was? Did everyone go to restaurants on the run?
Yeah, we had a pretty cool, we kind of perfected how to do these things. And so, we would do a simultaneous integration and a close. So we'd close on, say, February 28th, and on March, the transaction would close on February 28th. And then on March 1st, the customers, the customers in San Diego or whatever city, they would go to the website. Well, eventually when the website was there, to log in, and it would look like theirs, but they were on our back end. So we were running them under our co-brand on day one. And then, eventually we just migrate them completely over. But but the cultures were integrated immediately. And that was one of the really cool things.
Well, so that's one of the biggest challenges, Mike. I want you to help add some light to this. and you've been around it, you lived it. I actually have a white paper that, talks about this. Nothing will ruin your customer and employee experience faster than rapid growth, right? And that rapid growth, there's so many things. Like day one, I know you did this. We need a receptionist. We're going to interview 15 people to find that perfect receptionist, and we do. Now we're freaking growing, and we need 50 new employees. We're interviewing 55 to get 50, and the only reason why we went to 55 is 5 didn't want the job, right?
Yeah,
and you're compromising on this. And then the other thing that I want you to explain is buying new companies means you're buying new cultures. They don't do it the way you've done it. They don't obsess necessarily about the customer experience or the employee experience. So how did you, and I'm sure you stubbed your toe and found out the hard way, but how did you acquire different companies and get them to be bought in on, your vision of obsessing over the employee and the customer?
Well, listen, it's definitely an issue in all acquisitions. We were lucky. We were still young and dumb, and had a lot of energy, and we were buying other companies that were sort of young and a youthful kind of like staff. So we weren't having to integrate, older people that were stuck in their ways. But as leaders, our number one responsibility is to create that envisioned future that people want to rally around and people want to be a part of. So when we would go into these smaller companies, we had already systemized a lot of what we do. We had a great culture. We had technology. We were doing some cool things. And so we were pitching a story in a future that was better than what they currently were living. And the growth opportunities that they could have, the management opportunities, there's the soft HR stuff as well. But they were more interested in, wow, we're part of this cool organization that's looking to do some great things. And so it all came down to really aligning around a vision of what we were trying to do. And once we got that, then we really took good care of them, and made sure that they were getting trained and developed, and we were, and they had good management on the team. We were back and forth visiting them and so on and so forth. So we got better at each one, but so that's the first thing, the envisioned future. And as time went on, because I said that we did this like simultaneous close and integration, we were so good at that we really took all the disruption out of when we took the business over. We did all the hard work leading up to it. So by the time we turned it on, these people were like, they were running in our systems. They had been trained. We were with them. We'd spent that time. So we didn't have this whole like, well, this is one business and this is this business. And it was like blah, blah, and fighting. We were one unit on the day we opened. So number one was the envisioned future, because we were bringing something better to the table than they were used to. We aggregated mom and pop businesses. Okay. So some of them were super well run and excellent at customer service. Most of them were great at customer service because you've got the entrepreneur on the ground. But
I'm going to guess, Mike, before you get there, mom and pops, and we all started that way. We don't systematize because it's just us, right? And we're in beginning, and we're wearing every hat. And we know how to, do every position in the world back of our head, but we typically mom and pops don't systematize. So I'm thinking that's where you came in and were able to bring your systems.
It gets back to that. They were still the soul of the company. They were still, the company was still on their back. And so they were small enough that, they could do that. But when we came in and gave them this envisioned future, gave them the great integration and all the training, they could see how this whole thing fit together. And so that's why that worked. The third thing we did, though, as well, in order to make sure we're executing, is we took the entrepreneurs and we took them out of management and we made them ambassadors for the organization. So they would go have the relationships with restaurants, visit some customers. But we knew that having the entrepreneur founder report into one of like my number two at Restaurants on the Run and operations, that was not going to work. No founder wanted to report into somebody. So we said, hey, you're still a part, you're the ambassador, go kiss, have fun, kiss babies, talk to restaurants. But your management team, which you probably didn't like to manage anyways, we're taking that over so that we can scale customer service and scale execution.
Did these people you bought their business, did they have an earnout?
We never really structured that.
No.
There might have been one deal we probably put together like that. But mostly we would, buy them out. They'd carry some paper, so they had some skin in the game to make sure that, the business was going well. And we went through some ups and downs, and we went through 2009.
Oh, dude, I mean, I don't, you didn't have to go through this. I don't, you couldn't come in and buy my business and I stay there. And then all of a sudden you're painting the walls a different color. I'm like, what are you doing? They've always been blue. Blue's the color. Like, why are you painting, the walls, orange, right? I mean, you're in my house. You're in my baby that I gave birth to.
Yeah.
And why are you changing things up? And, I couldn't imagine it. That's why, we've bought salons before, and we get one where we kept the staff and the owner. We gave her an earnout, which was the best thing we did because it was in her best interest. If we were painting the walls a funky color that she didn't agree with, she had to bite her lip and say, no, Mike, this color's necessary, because her earnout was based on her employees that stayed. Yeah. She'd get a commission, because usually when you buy, buy a salon, everyone leaves, right? Yeah. So it was and it worked. It worked. I mean, for a few years. But
we're lucky, because most earnouts don't work. And most earnouts land in litigation. Now, a lot of them do, because it's really, eventually the founder, the guy that's, some of them work. Like you and I probably have lots of friends in EO and YPO that have had second and third bites of the apple because they sold to a big company that they did a whole bunch of stuff independent of what we did that just, but like a lot of times smaller businesses, it's like, they lose control of what they can control. So it gets a little contentious. So we decided to go a different direction on all of that. And so, but it all came back to what I said, the envisioned future for not only the people, but for the entrepreneur. They were able to sell their business in an industry that was really, there were no buyers. So when you combine that envisioned future with the way we integrated them and trained them prior to taking over the business, and then you put those 2 to 3 things together, and that's what made them successful.
I thought customer obsession, employee obsession, and systems. I'm not sure. That's how we started, for sure. Yeah. Employee obsession, customer obsession, and then of course we ended up, because of my inability to do it, we had a massive obsession with accountability. So I remember what you're just. I don't mean bad accountability. I mean good accountability. Right. Yeah. Which is going to lead to our next thing. But what year did you sell? 15, 17? Yeah. And I remember asking people that knew you, why is he getting out? He's too young. And I didn't see it, but they had told me, it's getting flooded with competition, AKA DoorDash and all them. So you sell this for a few $1 billion, and you were looking at starting a spaceship to the moon. Can't you tell I'm in my plane right now? Right. So then you're sleeping until noon and driving your wife crazy. So how'd you go to your next business? All right. So you're a successful entrepreneur. Tell me about the transition next. I would say I was more lucky than successful. We probably in year 5 or 6, right around the time we were doing the San Diego thing, we had a small investor. And because we had, we didn't understand, there's a lot of things entrepreneurs don't understand. A lot of things entrepreneurs are bad at. Number 1, we're bad at saying no. Number 2, we're very bad at financial statements and understanding how those work and cash in our business. And number 3, we're a lot of times very bad at pricing, and we're afraid. And I know you've been great at that. So year 5 or 6, my investor was like, in so many words, said, like, Michael, like, I couldn't answer his questions. Like, all my questions were like, our people are great. We're growing, revenue expanding. Feels good. Everything's awesome. But we really weren't making money. And we didn't even understand. The worst thing is we really didn't even understand that we weren't. And he was just throwing money in because he was an internet investor. And he was smart enough to see the future. And needless to say, he ended up with a 10x on his money. He put in a little bit of money. And he told me one day, he goes like, Michael, if this was a publicly traded CEO, we'd fire you. He goes like, and so I had to take a step back and, and think about what did I want? What do I really want? And if anybody wants to read, any of your listeners want to read the long version of this, you can go to harvardhbr.org and you can get the case study that you can buy it on there. I'll put that case study in the show notes. Yeah. Along with, your website and how to follow you on social media. So all that will be in the show notes. Good. What's the name of the article? Well, you'll find if you search it, it's Michael Caito, entrepreneurial CEO. And you'll see it in there. Did you write it? Restaurants on the Run. No, USC wrote it. They did the case study because I teach up at the school at the entrepreneur school. They wanted to do it, and then Harvard picked it up and they sell it over there. So nice. It gets you all the way through. It gives the detail
and interviews people up to this point. And then they leave it to the class to decide, what does Michael do? So,
you're a case study.
Case study.
Nice.
So what happened is I went to my forum and I said to him, I told him the story, and, we were all kind of in the same spot. We're all a mess at that point, trying to figure out our businesses in our 20s. And one guy was a CPA. He referred me to this company called MAP Consulting. I went to a 2.5-day workshop, which they still do to this day every month in Newport Beach. It's amazing. It's the greatest workshop ever for CEOs and executives and managers. And I went to this workshop and I was like, it was a deep dive on me, but as being a deep dive on me to understand where I was good, where I was bad, feedback from other people, constituents, friends, I walked out and I was like, okay, I get it. This is what I need to do to be a great CEO, a great leader, a great manager, but also gave me a toolkit, for how to put a system of accountability in my business so that everybody in the organization was aligned, focused, and executing. So it worked, and we bought it, but the point I wanted to make about the accountability is why I said I wasn't good at it, why we were obsessed with it, is I had to bring a coach in to help, because putting a management system in your business, putting accountability in your business, it's simple and easy, except we don't do it as entrepreneurs. And so having a coach in there that worked with my executive team every single month for 15 years helped us take this system of goal setting and push it up and down the organization, so that when we had all these drivers delivering in 10 different cities, they were all delivering on the same kind of value proposition and service to our customers, no matter where they were, whether they were delivering to an oil company in Houston or to a technology company in San Francisco or San Diego or, biotech. Because our frontline people, the drivers, they understood we're getting measured on these two things, accuracy and on-time delivery. And they knew that rolled right up to the strategy and the vision and the value proposition for the company. We would never have been able to do that without having this system of accountability from MAP in our business, so that everybody knew how what they did linked to the strategy of the business. And that's the end game, whether it's service or whatever it is, that's the end game. So we did that, and that helped us scale our business to 10 markets. So I tell you this to tell you that. I told you that to tell you this, to get to your question, what I do. Well, I worked for Grubhub for a year, was actually fired after a year because they didn't need me anymore, which was great.
This is after, so Grubhub bought you.
They bought us in 2015. I stayed on for a year. They didn't need me after that, so they let me go. They kept
How
all my
hard was
people.
that to work for someone else?
Well, I didn't have to do anything because we trained our managers so well.
Yeah.
Because they all got trained by MAP. And so I wasn't doing anything. They literally called me. The CEO of a public company called me and said, hey, we want you to take over this other company we bought. It's in 4 cities. They have another 600 people. And I said, fine, no problem. We'll take care of it. In the meantime, I'm like, I'm not working. Like, they're in Chicago. I'm in Orange County. The first call I make is to my number 2, Ryan. I say, Ryan, you got another job. And I gave him the company to run. And he went in and put all of our systems in place around that we put in for MAP. And now we had 1,000 people on his downline. And like I said, I didn't have anything to do. So after a year, I left. And so coincidentally, Ryan now works at MAP. I brought him over in addition to a couple other key people.
I figured.
And he's crushing it.
So you bought MAP.
So my wife is like, go do something.
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm not employable.
Right.
And I love what I love, my passion. Your passion is service. My passion is this: accountability, execution, measuring the right things in a business, helping them grow, just like, we both love it. And so I went and talked to MAP, and they were at the time a 56-year-old company. So they were looking for what's the next step. So I bought them, and now we've been kind of simmering with MAP for the last 5 years and layering technology and some digital learning and trying to scale it and help, more companies around the world,
And so for our listeners, MAP is a coaching program for executives?
It's basically like you go in and put customer service systems in place. We go in and put accountability systems in place. But we also, there's 2 things we do. So the management system or accountability system is just like Gazelles from Vern Harnish, scaling up, or from EOS.
EOS, that's what I thought.
That's it. The other side of our business is we actually train managers how to operate in that system. So rather than just putting the system in place, we actually train managers and leaders how to actually be managers and leaders. So it's this whole secret sauce, to steal a little bit of your words, that comes together that allows us to really be successful and create these raving fans.
And what type of businesses does MAP work with? All types, every industry?
The system works in any business, and I train a lot of entrepreneurs through EO, and some of them are too small to be candidates for consulting, but I tell them, go to the workshop because you're going to have a ton. So the workshop's for any manager. But if you're going to hire us for consulting, you're generally a, $7 to $10 million plus company, 20 to 30 employees, and you have a couple of characteristics.
B2B?
A lot of them are trade companies, big construction, HVAC. Like I said, it works with any kind of industry, but it comes down to the CEO. Okay. It comes down to the CEO being humble enough to know that he needs help, hungry enough that he wants to grow, and willing to say, let's bring somebody in, because they have to believe in developing their people. If they don't believe in developing their people and having a way to like goal set and hold people accountable in their business so that they can grow, so that the CEO can work on the business instead of in the business, if they don't believe that, then they're not our client. I'll just say no, thank you. So we're all about making, building better individuals, teams, and companies. But it's not that, John, there's no fluff, bro. It's just like hardcore. Put your hat on, put your hard hat on. Like, we're coming in talking about goal setting. Did you make the numbers? Pants,
right?
This is your big boy. This is not like a fluffy. This is not a 25-year-old consultant. This is a 50 to 60 to 70-year-old seasoned former CEO that is not there to make friends. But they're nice. Don't get me wrong. We're friendly. But you know what I mean? But I mean,
listen, as a consultant, you have to keep people on track. You have to hold them accountable, because at the end of the day, they have a lot of things on their plate, the project leads that we deal with. And once it isn't top of mind, and if their senior executives are putting too much on their plate to compete with what they're supposed to be doing in our project fails, and we look like we were a bad investment.
Yeah, and it works for it's funny. It's like in 21 minutes, I have a call with the president of a $2.5 billion company that's been a client for 20 years, and they want us to keep training their managers. And so they don't run the system in their business. Well, they may, but we don't go in there as a consultant to run the system. But we train all their managers. They buy companies, they send their leaders through. We train them. Get them better prepared to go run their business. You got
another business booming.
No.
This is your business.
Yeah. I can only handle one at a time.
No, but I mean, is this it? Is this what you plan on doing for a while? Building maps?
This is my passion. This is what I love.
That's awesome.
This is what I love, bro.
Listen, we share a few clients. One is Benson Kearley, who I was just out speaking to, and they were telling me what an amazing job you do for them. Yeah, I personally go and work with them. I'm flying out there actually in a couple of weeks, and I'll work. What's great about Benson Kearley is I'll work with Benson Kearley, but then Steve, the CEO, his 4 kids started another business. So I know. Yeah. It's kind of like a Top Golf, but I was just there, and they talk so highly of you. So, all right, Caito, let's wrap this up. Something that I've always really appreciated about you, and very fortunate to have gone past the consultant-client relationship, and I like to, at least I brag to people that we're friends. I don't know if that's exactly.
I don't admit it, but yeah.
Right. But we've broken bread together. We've when I come to LA, I try to catch up, work together. But one of the most important things, as successful as you are professionally, is your wife and 3 mob monsters.
Yeah, they are.
So listen, everyone listening, whatever level they are, they're trying to keep, this balance thing. Yeah. What are some of your best practices that you've done to make sure you put your family first? And along with that, what would you tell your 25-year-old self to do differently?
Yeah. Well, by the way, I'll tell you, very similar answers. Okay. So there's 3 things I really tell my kids all the time, and they get sick of it. I mean, I've always had these little rules that I tell them since they were little kids. These aren't the 3 I'm going to tell you, but the first one I taught them when they were little, I'm like, always treat mommy as the queen. And I would be driving around and I'd ask them, what's rule number 1? Treat mommy as the queen. I go, what's rule number 2? And they're like, brothers first. And, like things like that. And
love that.
But as they got older, I really try to say 3 things to them. And I'm going to keep adding to this list because I think I just had another one come to me the other day.
Another son?
No, another one of my big things I talked about. I talk to them about, listen, you are what you think about. Okay. So think big and give your time, give your head, your space, give yourself the space to think big, give yourself the space to think, read, study. They don't listen. Number 2, you are what you repeatedly do. So make sure what we're doing on a daily basis, links to what you're thinking about and where you want to go in life. And number 3, you are who you hang out with. And, that's the bottom line. And so that's why I appreciate, your kids did sports, my kids did sports, and it gave them purpose every day. They got up, they had a purpose every day. They had something, a vision, something they were thinking about. They had discipline. And for the most part would end up with the right people because they were focused on the same thing. I'm at football. I have football games twice a week. I have 2 kids in high school that, they're playing, every week, although football season just wrapped up. So that's what I try to tell them. And so your question about,
You tell your younger self?
Well, your question about like what best practices in the house, whatever best practices I had, they were the things that I tried to repeatedly do that linked to my vision, my purpose, what I was thinking about. What I was thinking about was I want to be a great husband. I want to be a great father. I want to be married. And so the things that, I would do with my wife, mostly what I did was I would try to keep, besides us being a family, and I coached and I was fully integrated into everything, but I really tried to make sure that she was not getting overwhelmed. Even though I was running a business, I tried to make sure that I was doing the little things that were giving her, like I'd give her these mommy evacuations where I'd be like, you're out for 2 nights. You're going to the hotel, just to get her away from her children. Because it's, what it's like, 3 boys are a lot. So those are the type of things that I would think about. But everything I did linked to like wanting to be that best version of, what would keep the family intact. So as far as what I tell my 25, it's working so far.
Your kids are 18, 16, and 14?
Close. They just switched. So you were right up until a couple of weeks ago, but they're 18, 17, and 15.
Yeah. And listen, they're great kids. You have inspired me as a business leader, one of my favorite clients I've ever worked with, but probably more personally. And personally is just, how you take care of people, how you take care of a vendor partner, how you take care of your employees, how you take care of your customers. Yeah. And how you put your family first. It's really cool. And I appreciate that. Best place for our listeners to go to is the map.
Yeah, I would say, mapconsulting.com.
We'll have that in there.
I also throw in there I have a TED Talk. Oh, TEDx Talk. Yeah. Not as good as yours.
Did you get a TEDx Talk? They must have not seen our reviews.
It's called you could just search Michael Caito, YouTube Michael Caito. It takes
I'll put it in the link in the show notes.
Mapconsulting.com is the website.
Yep. Your Instagram accounts and the HBR article. This is good stuff. Caito, thanks for being on.
Bro, listen, let me just tell you something. If the listeners haven't watched your TEDx talk, listen, you want to talk about something to teach your kids. And I know you taught, you've taught Johnny, Cal, and Bo, these concepts around Ford. And I know you would play your game when you're on trips to figure out who can find out friends, occupation, recreation.
Yeah.
Dreams faster than anybody else. Dude, it is more relevant than ever. Yeah. What your TEDx talk is. And it's especially great for kids, especially kids trying to build that community when they're so stuck in their face in their phone. And they're like they don't understand how to do what you talk about. So it's a must watch.
I appreciate that, buddy. All right. Well, thank you, Michael Caito.
Matt and I are best friends. That's why you get them mixed up.
Yes. Thank you, Michael Caito, for taking the time out and sharing with our listeners. And thank you, revolutionaries. And we'll be right back. All right, I want to end this week's episode with living an extraordinary life so countless others do. My 2 favorite words are give more. Love these words. The best way to build long-term sustainable relationships is to give more in both your personal and professional life. I have tried to build this in my life's purpose and around these 2 words, give more. We live in a very cynical society today. We tend to operate by agreements, right? Our deal, our arrangement. And one side is supposed to do A, B, and C, and I do X, Y, and Z. However, most people wait. They make sure the other side does what they say before they do what they're going to do. So what I try to practice and teach my employees and my boys is to do your side first. Do X, Y, and Z first and throw in W, even though W wasn't part of the agreement and even though they weren't expecting W. Give more than the deal says, more than what people expect. Don't wait for the other person, the other side to do what they said they promised to do. Don't keep score and don't have a good memory. meaning don't remember 3 years ago when someone didn't do what they said. Okay. Giving more is one of the most selfish things you can do. Okay. Because, the way it comes back to you, and that's not why you give more, but the way it comes back to you is tenfold. That means if you borrow someone's pickup truck to move furniture, return them that vehicle cleaner and with more gas than you got it. To build meaningful relationships, I invite you to give more in all your relationships. We will see you next week on the Customer Service Revolution podcast.